I think this season will be the last, you know. Well, I mean, coasters have their channels for spreading news, mainly ex-coasters. From such people, news filters through to friends of ex-coasters, not to mention relations, and eventually travels the length and breadth of the country. So maybe everybody knows why, and maybe everybody doesn't yet. Here I am, wound round in a welter of words with a mystery on my hands and very uncertain what to say about it. But this is the core of the matter, the heart of the nut, king bait. One thing everybody does know about the coast is bait, white bait. That succulent little fish, quick and loosened, likened to in an old haiku to the spirit of the waters. You might know the haiku, the white bait, as though the spirit of waters were moving. And every beginning spring, coasters in their hundreds flock to the rivers and streams to swoop and scoop and blind drag as many as possible out of sanctuary. When it's a good season, tons are lovingly packed into freezers against the lean, non-bait portion of the year. Tons more are railed and flown over the hill weekly. The coast becomes a joyous place, the coaster a contented being. Of course, quite a few hundredweight get converted meantime into patties and omelettes and, well, whatevers. How did your mother cook them when she got them from the shop? I'm from Christchurch. We eke out the bait with flour and other foreign bodies, but here, prodigality. Take half a pound of bait per person, add an egg, 2 eggs if you really like eggs. Stir vigorously until fish and egg is a viscous froth full of strange little eyes. Add half a teaspoon of baking powder, a little salt, a smidgen of pepper, and then fry the mix quickly but with care. There you have a coast feed. 2 right-sized whitebait patties, a subtly flavoured delight for anyone with a tongue in their head. Last year, anybody hungry? Last year I missed the whitebait season. I was newly arrived from Christchurch and unaware of coastways. I bought my bait from a local fish shop and was well content to get it 40% cheaper than the family over the hill. Last year I couldn't have told you the difference between a net for the terry and one used in the grey, nor what the advantages of superjack over geranium, set nets with strangers, and the joys of very early morning tea in a tin shack on a riverside, also unknown. The haiku was just a pleasant poetic fancy, blind dragging, peculiar terminology, and the great runs, well, myths of the past, a nice concept to beguile the tourists. This year I'm all enthusiasm. Buy myself the regulation round grey net and a bloody great pole to go with it, equip myself with gumboots, get out old fishing clothes, and head down to the river at odd hours waiting on changing tides. Drag that net, eyes strained, shoulders filled with a dead ache, hopeful of a nice little pudding in the bottom of an island bag, or a very large one, for the season started out a boomer. Tons of bait about, happy faces all round, reflecting my smug grin. Full stomachs abounding, appetite satisfied, bank book replete, and yet expecting much, much more. Things are just beginning. All over the coast, the hiss of hot fat and the crunching of little eyes. And you know what? I think it's the end. A very strange thing happened yesterday, 20 to 9 under Cobden Bridge. A strange, a horrible, a holy thing. Friday night was a good night. I'd been to the local juicery, talked a lot, sung a bit, drank to capacity, happy among happy people. Came home with the white moon high over the sea. A windless, peace-filled night. The only sound that liquid, continuous chirping of tree frogs. I cooked a couple of patties, ate them with a last cold beer from the fridge, and went to bed. Relaxed, full, content, perfectly at ease. Ah, sweet. And then the morning. I woke suddenly, dropped abruptly out of sleep. For a moment I couldn't place the awakening factor, and then there it was. A most peculiar, hysterical liveness filling the quiet street, streaking up my quiet hill, a shrill cacophony of voices, bloody kids, I think, and go to turn over, back to sleep. It penetrates then. White bait running, white bait running, white bait. The words and strangeness were enough. I shot out of bed, into my denims and T-shirt faster than it said, grabbed my boots in the net, and screamed out the door and down the hill far more quickly than I've ever done. In fact, I'd reached the bottom before I'd realised I'd left the pole back in the house, or asked myself why somebody should tell everybody about a good thing. But the street is alive as never before. The old lady recluse, who's probably never seen the light of day outside for years, is standing there, mouth open, staring-eyed, looking shrunken and untidy on the footpath. The new family at the corner is running in a graduated straggle round the corner, all 11 of them. As they vanish, the bloke next door and his wife with the new kid rush out. He's got the net and pole, and she has one arm full of kerosene tins and plastic bags, and one arm full of baby, and I swear it's not the former she's going to drop. I don't wait round looking anymore. Bugger the pole. I hove off through a shortcut down into Bright Street, and believe you me, all ambulant Cobden seems to be there. I'm a heavy sleeper, late waker, and the street is now crowded with everyone before me, running, walking, staggering, hell for leather for the river. Well, normally it's a 10-minute walk from my place to the bridge, but even with the crowd, I make it in a 3-minute run. After getting through the lame oldies and the slow small fry, it's much easier, of course, there was the risk of being skewered by poles or having the breath thumped from one by a carelessly strung keratin. But Christchurch Friday night in the square experience came to the fore here, and I'm in the van of the rush as we reach the river. That stretched just before the north end of the bridge. Down the bank, trampling bush, slipping, kicking someone, grazing my hand on a tree I used to break my headlong eagerness a moment, all pulsing wild excitement to get a spot. And stop aghast, because before God, the grey is solid whitebait bank to bank. A fabulous massive life. This is obviously a whitebaiter's tree, mate. A fabulous massive life, so thick in the river that the water isn't seen. Just a seething froth of bait, frantic yet merciful, a live river flowing in from the sea. And the hiss of disturbed water from their passing is louder than rain, louder than rapids, as spirited and loud as great falls. I scoop holding the rim of the net. It's full, absolutely chocker, and I drag it elated to the shore. The nylon is strained to its limits. Damn, nowhere to put the catch. But the bait, contrary to the normal lively whipping efforts to get out of the net and into the river, lie there like a sacrifice and peacefully begin to die. Strange. All my feverish desire to catch whitebait is gone. I lay the net with gentleness on the river sand at my feet, and all along the bank, as the people come slithering excitedly down and then stop, stunned, they are now doing the same. Over on the Greymouth side, the weird thing happens, as the crowds gather and swell and burst to the riverside. Horrified reverence for this impossible dream run. Except for one man. I don't know who he is, a thigh-booted, dungareed individual made distant and inhuman by his action, for he is swinging his net like an automaton, scooping the bait, flinging it silver and anywhere on the shore. There is saliva hanging in a shining string from the corner of his mouth, and I'm not so far away I can't see the money glaze on his eyes. It's inevitable, a feeling of disaster growing. Stop it, you bastard, from voices in the crowd. Leave them alone. But he continues shovelling up the unresisting harvest. An eddy in the river of bait, or an eddy from the crowd pushing harder out? I don't know, but he is suddenly off his feet, falling with grotesque, flailing slowness into the froth of eyes. The bait river moves on, and how to swim when the water is gone, how to swim in a viscous, moving jelly. His dark head is above the river once, shining all over with lucid bodies, mouth gaping open, nostrils flaring wide but full of writhing fish. If ever a man died in a dream-turned nightmare, that was him. And yet, not a movement or a sound is heard from any of us, just a shared feeling of wonderment, of rightness, and inevitability, as the whitebait we caught die on the shore. Things move to a conclusion. And then there is an unforgettable sound, a vast wind of indrawn breath coming from the seaward end of the river. People astonished, bereft of all movement except the gasp of awe. Slowly it swells, welling along the banks of the river, both sides of the river, while we have no knowledge, wait, and there, midstream, lambent, borne on the moving tide, the spirit of the waters living. We disagreed how big today, 10 or maybe 12 feet of lighted perfection, clear as the most clear water, except for the fine line of black speckling on his sides, and the slender dark-drawn rays of his four fins and tails, and the golden brain on the top of his head, and the eyes, the great silver eyes, intensely circled black centres, burnished globes on the inward side of his head. They reflect neither intelligence, nor love, nor malignity, but show forth pure being, summation, a complete, benign magnificence. For as the multitude of whitebait had gathered to protect this one by sheer pacific numbers, so there was nothing to fear from him. Watch with calm incredulity as he passes, kingbait. And as much bait flowed behind in that protective solid wall, now unharried by fish or bird or man, as came to be preyed on before. I thought of the millions upon millions of ridiculous, harmless little fish who had been sacrificed to provide a safe passage for that majesty, and did not wonder much, therefore, at feeling echoes of their mass-consuming joy. There is nothing in the river except the white slime froth of their passing and the water. And someone says, loud in the quiet that follows after, hell, I hope they make it to where that is going. I hope they get there. And someone near me, voicing all the other thought of the people, God love us, but are they ever coming back? I'd like to explain both the poem and the pieces of drawing and Paua shells that go with it. They make some coherency altogether, but otherwise it just looks like a rather strange ragtag mixture. Picture, if you will, a family of 5 children, actually 6, but one was a babe in arms with a sick mother and wasn't involved in this episode, who'd gone to a strange place after the death of their father and had become involved in a form of beach warfare. They didn't initially get on with the locals at all. They found an ally, a very strange little boy. Now I look back on it, was obviously neglected and possibly abused. But he had a truly strange and morbid imagination. And what with the warlike feelings we were having towards some of the local children on the beach, and this kid to spark off a engagement, controversy, battle, we developed something we called Paua Shell Gods. And they were primarily focusing points for our upset and hatred. And curiously, they appeared to work. It was as though something you put your belief into and it amplified it and bounced it back. So I had originally intended to bring something that was much more allied to me being a woman. But while I was thinking of that particular poem, Paua Shell Gods kept on repeating themselves, and I eventually drew background sketches and wrote this poem and made myself some abalone gods that I haven't done for years. So that's the background part. This is the poem. It's reasonably long. It has 3 main points in it, I think. One is that I was 11 at this stage. I was just beginning to bud myself to turn into a woman. And I had become aware that things bred, things changed, there was seasonal influences. You know, for goodness sake, those gulls down the beach aren't actually having piggybacks. And became aware that seaweed had its own season. So that's an important part. Another part is there's a little refrain, from what island does the seaweed come? And this is based on a Maori proverb which means for a stranger to declare themselves. And the third thing is that I refer at one point to them out there. And them out there were actually a form of St Elmo's fire that occurs at Moreaki. It looks like lights out on the sea. But I'd always as a child thought of them as other people out there. This is far too long to get into the poem. It was the year of omens, dead dolphin on Watercup beach, oil slick flexing with each wave by Fisherman's Reef. Molkeki brooded, silent and chagrin as ever. From what island does the seaweed come? It was a season of strut and strangeness, hurt, crippled, changes, the year of our Paua Shell Gods. Now the kelp is in its golden breeding colours. Now the gulls, court and preen, hump and skirl, scream and shag each other. It is the ripe moon water month, open fecundity. I had never noticed before. It is children believing another child, whistling as he breathed, no change or strangeness in that. Legs locked neatly into place, smiles screwed like pain lines in his face, the perfect puppet with the perfect mask, except he had already cut the strings. You don't know when it's good, he said. You don't even know when it's bad. Nobody's tweezed your shell off yet. Nobody's woke your ghosts. Now the mating trees send yellow grit eggs down the wind. He held the shell, naked by the sea. Jesus our mirror and God my ass, I can make this do lightnings, and grin for the devil in his soul. Now the sea is full of summer thunder, summer rain, green ghost wildfire over the whale hump hills. Paua Shell Gods have no names. They take a lot of finding. When you set them up, do not expect answers. All they do is listen and occasionally shake your world. Sacrifice? Sacrifice? We don't make no sacrifice. They take sacrifice. Dried cod, mouth still paining from the hook, hanging in the north wind. Even a wet south tomorrow brings no relief. I had never noticed before. Never start believing your own myths. We are a cruel, inventive race. An air shell listening, but we dreamed of towers babbling. Children being rats in the adult world, we stole in and stole glue and stole out and scattered back to our den and altar before they knew they were plundered. Still boat shed, held in memory. Curves and creels and kelp bags, rusted tins with rush-shut lids, and old, old hooks. We glue gross round idols, ears all ways to catch the whisper of the world. Shining sea totems, loved each lime-backed hump that cupped the glow of waves. He inserted hold unholies to make a dying god. It is now good to know a god decays, bit by bit, scraped by insect, earth or sea into oblivion. But all the words were, the more holes, the more ears, mine's the wisest. From what island does the seaweed come? Now the golden scum of kelp seeds, dies, rots. Now the gulls have sailed down the winds to rocks of home. I have swallowed pollen. Suppose it grows little trees in your head. The altar is a glad, secret crack. The anthem is always the roll of the sea. The grown-ups are glad of our absence. The aimless arrow cometh. We developed a war with another tribe who made a mocking race of crab-shell gods. Inquisition, torture, and jeering cries to recant, it sailed the days of summer away until they stood on our altar and cracked our gods with stones, and their laughter cracking like a rockfall down a cliff. We hope they die soon. Or maybe, sing their power, he said, a giant foot of gluey dark to cap them, suck them dry. And it was trumpets when Soph broke her leg by the cliff, drums when they took Tahu to Borstal, and an abyss when our strange prophet vanished. Look at what the sea has made, and then look at the shapes I have given you. Do not laugh at the difference. The lure and shine of this shell is as much my work as the Paua's. She also has claim to my bones. The roughened scar of pearl where the holdfast clenched, grew, failed. Shells that battled, ended broken, battered, beaten in sea wars. We all lose the sea war. We never learned where he went. The adults merely turned grey when we asked, and the other gang said, ask your gods. I have never learned where he went. The ears are silent, unpossessed. Walking along the wave line, burning lights to them out there, I would ring bells if they would answer, songs or shore or thunders. From what island did the seaweed come? His head was always away with the birds. Hey, I'm not broken, am I? No, bent is all. The blue-green sea glow has turned to sickly opalescence. Now I wear a ring whose wink and flicker shows me sea change just the same. The only survival is to hold on or burrow deeper into the dark. And now the kelp, waves black and winter sinister. Now the gulls huddle one-legged against the wind. Now the trees bend and moan. Left dust in the crevice, shrouded with seaweed, they may be still there. For Pipi, who never trusted even his own shadow, there is one, and there is one, and there is one. That